obsessed with carrots and obsessed with mangoes. And like,
Oh.
I'm vegan, he's not vegan, but I'm like, you're definitely my son though, because we like the same snacks.
Hold on, my child who's also not vegan. Come here. Come here. But who's so food motivated, she'll scrounge for it. I'm recording now, but of course we edit everything down. Here's Ponyo.
Hello, Banyo.
Hello.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
Banyo. Mustard, do you want to come here? Here, I'm gonna try and see if I can get him on camera. Hi, Bee. Hi,
Hi.
honey. You say hi. Oh, I love you. Oh, you sweet perfect.
Oh,
You sweet perfect bee.
he
He's like, I
really
want to
is.
be included, but only a little bit.
I would like to be included. I don't know what I have to say, but I'll.
It's like I don't know what exactly I'm bringing to the conversation, but Mama's giving me scritches behind the ear, so I'm
Oh.
here. Hi, baby. Is that nice? You sweet angel baby.
Oh. I'm
Hi.
gonna start recording on my phone as a backup,
Yes, I'm going to
just in
start recording
case.
on mine as well.
Wonderful. I like having several backups just because I'm like, what? I don't know what. What if my
I'm
connection's bad?
exactly. And I'm the kind of person who'll be like, okay, I have everything set the way it needs to be set on my computer. And then halfway through, I'll be like, actually, I don't have everything set up the way I needed to. And now everything is ruined.
This happened to me. I had to start doing remote recording for a podcast project that's like very serious. Like they had me come in the studio and then I got freaked out about COVID. So now I'm doing it from home. And I did a session where I recorded. I forgot to choose microphone. And so it recorded using my laptop. And so I did like an hour of directed recording of being like, try that again like this. And then I was like, why does it sound bad? And I had to tell them, I was like, it's because I don't have anyone to tell me what to do. It's because
Those are always the worst times.
I know. And then I had to be like, I'm willing to do it again. I'll do it in the middle of the night when there's no cars going by.
Yep, exactly. I'll be under a blanket this time. I promise.
By the way, I asked Beth to come, but she's babysitting right now.
Yeah.
But she wanted me to say hi, and she did have a question for you.
Oh, I'm excited to see to hear the Beth question.
Okay, wonderful.
Oh,
Well,
my
let's.
computer does not want to connect.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Guys. Okay, no, I don't need the sound canceling button. Oh man, for such high tech doohickeys, they only have 2 buttons, and that's not enough buttons for me.
You're like, I would like to go through and manually choose.
Exactly. That's fine. I can use just my little tiny earbuds then, just on the off chance there is any outside sound. It's living in the
Sure.
city.
And even if not, I can just mark where it is and we can cut it out.
Oh, that's fair. Oh, there they are. Yes, connect. Bless.
Can you hear me through that? Oh, wonderful.
Let's see. Is it doing the thing? Oh, it's going in and out for a second. I think it's doing the thing.
Is it doing the thing?
Oh, you're definitely still coming through my computer. So,
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Maybe it's in
technology.
my Zoom settings.
Oh yeah, I bet it's in your Zoom settings. If you click like on that little arrow next to the mute button.
Oh, yeah. That's where the sound ones are. There we go. Yes, select a microphone. Select a speaker, my headset. There we go.
Can the microphone still be your computer and then the speaker be your headset?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Put that back to computer.
Oh my God, perfect. I only know this tip because I have had to be coached through this multiple times.
Okay. I appreciate it because anytime I talk to anyone, I'm just like, tell me what to do. I was talking to NPR a couple of weeks ago and their sound engineer like joined in and was just like, we can hear your heating ducts. And I'm like, how? I believe you, but how?
How is that even happening?
Let me close the window blinds for the sweet man so he won't stress himself out. Colonel, sweet bean.
Colonel mustard.
Hi, honey. Who is it? I know. How dare you? Those neighbors having the audacity to live next to us. I know. Mustard, you can't see them anymore, honey. I know. a treat and he can hang out. He heard treats and hanging out, and now everything is okay.
Oh, he's like, I'll do it.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, being calm means I get food. I'll be calm any day of the week. There you go, baby.
Oh, yum. Yesterday, we have a border collie who we trick him into looking out the back window to see if there's any squirrels that he can see. And yesterday, he chose not to show up for his squirrel shift, and 2 raccoons walked through the backyard. And he really missed out.
There you go. And that's why you always got to show up for work and on time.
I know.
You could miss the raccoons.
Well, and then I didn't want to call him because I didn't want to scare them away because I knew as soon as he saw them, he would lose it. Do I call you Alexis or Alexis Nicole?
Alexis is perfect.
Okay, great. I do enjoy sharing a partial name with you. All right.
It is wonderful.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, we're getting ready. Mustard is here too. His head is on my other hand, so it can't be all the way up in the air right now.
Alexis, welcome to Sagittarian Matters.
Hello, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to talk to you. I feel like we have almost too many things that we could talk about.
I know. Like if this was allowed to be a 3-hour episode, oh my goodness, the places we would go.
If this was like the Joe Rogan podcast, which I before have like tried to see a clip because somebody I liked, and I was like, oh my God, they just sit here for like 3 hours just hanging out.
I don't get it, but I'm jealous of it. Like I'm like, oh man, I wish my brand was just hanging out and recording it and then people eating it up. That sounds like the dream.
I would honestly subscribe to that podcast. If it was just you being like, ouch, ouch, I touched the boiling thing. Okay, hold on. All right. We have so much to talk about. We have a lot of listener questions. We have questions from friends to the show, Beth Ditto and Morgan. But
Yay.
Before we get to that, we need to start at the very, very beginning, which was a question on people's minds. Mm-hmm. You began foraging at a young age.
Yes.
How did you begin foraging?
So my mother, who is wonderful, has been like a really cool, highfalutin businesswoman since before I was born. Her way to decompress between long weeks at work, even now, is gardening. So growing up, if I wanted to hang out with mom on the weekends, I would probably have to be outside, usually with a trowel in hand. I'm not saying I was helping with the trowel, but I was feeling included, and that's nice. So my mom used to quiz me on the plants, like starting at a pretty young age, used to be like, oh, okay, I taught you this one last week. Do you remember what it is? And I'd be like, echinacea. She'd be like, oh yes, very good. So she kind of put she kind of turned the wheels, put it in motion, like in my brain, starting to identify plants. And every once in a while, she would pull up a weed. The one that always comes to mind, and the one I remember most clearly, is onion grass, which I now know is field garlic, Allium vinale. And she was like, here, pull it up. You see how it looks different than the other grass? Give it a sniff. And, you know, it smells super garlicky. And she's like, yeah, and you can cook with it too. And something about that part, you didn't put it here on purpose, but it's useful and it got here all on its own. That just, a light bulb went off in my head and it never went back out.
And so you educated yourself, you're self-educated through just books and books and books and books. And also you have an interest in science.
Yeah, I've always loved science. I've always loved biology and botany. I went to a kind of, now I see, quirky elementary school. We were like taking intro level bio and botany classes starting in like the 1st grade all the way through 6th grade, which I'm like, yeah, every school should be doing that. If I can memorize, you know, all of the kingdoms, and any kid can, like, honestly. So but most of it has been self-taught. You know, I've learned a couple things in school, and I took my fair share of like math and science classes in university as well. But when it comes to IDing, yeah, that's like the question I get the most. It's like, what class do I take to just like be able to list all of these things off the top of my head? And honestly, the best class is getting outside with someone who's knowledgeable, or just like hunkering down and learning it yourself.
Oh my God. How much do I wish that I was in Ohio right now, walking around anywhere, literally anywhere with you?
Please come visit. We can go on walks, and I can stop every 30 seconds and point out another plant.
Hold on, I'm getting a book to put under my microphone.
Okay.
All right. I have a menopause book and a comic book about tribes in Canada that are going to hold up my microphone. Okay.
I love that combo.
I feel like I like, there's like, it's like a very particular space and time where like both of these books are new and I'm in the middle of both of them, and I get to be having these conversations. I grew up in Florida and then Kansas, and then I moved from Kansas and Missouri to Portland, Oregon. And now I live between Portland and LA, which have very different climates.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I would have to get, I guess, different books to talk about the different climates. But currently, like a lot of people, I am getting obsessed with mushrooms. And people around me have always foraged for mushrooms, but I've always been afraid because I don't have an eye for detail. And I fear poisoning myself, which would be the way that I would go.
And with mushrooms, there are a couple more boxes that you have to check when it comes to IDing them as opposed to plants, because you can have two mushrooms that visually look extraordinarily similar, and maybe the only way to tell them apart is a spore print. Maybe the only way to tell them apart is like looking under a microscope and seeing the shape of their spores. Like, it's wild, the amount of variation you have. And just within certain genuses with mushrooms, some of them will be choice edibles, and some of them will be very dangerous and bad for you. And I feel bad because so many times people will be like, okay, so like, what's the secret to knowing that a mushroom is edible? Like, what's the one rule that I need to know that, like, if I check that box, I can put that shroom into my face? And the answer I hate having to give to people, but I give it to them because it's true, is you just have to learn the mushrooms mushroom by mushroom. I wish we all demanded to be known as well and as deeply as fungi do. It would be a really good life skill to take on. But you really do just have to learn them individually. And it's time consuming, but it is worthwhile. I myself was never into fungi as a kid. Mushrooms kind of scared me as a child, and it's only now in adulthood that I started learning more about them and kind of really started diving into IDing. And for anyone who's overwhelmed, IDing is kind of like any hobby that you're doing, like playing a musical instrument. You're going to be kind of bad at it first. You get better, and the more you do it, the faster you get at it, and the faster you get at retaining the information. So don't worry, but also don't put things in your mouth unless you are 100% confident about what they are. I feel like I have to tag that on to everything that I say. Listen to this, but also don't hurt yourself.
Well, I kind of feel like, as you were saying that you had this lifelong education with your mom quizzing you, I feel a little bit like you're raising a generation of foragers, like people just following your TikTok being like, this sounds like such a great idea. I have all this extra time and this person's teaching me things I didn't know that are around me and giving me the Latin name and telling me what to do with it. And I'm getting like a little song that's, like one of those shows that we would watch growing up, where you get to like memorize it by remembering a song.
Yeah. And I loved those growing up. Like, that's how I memorized all of the state capitals. That's how I memorized all of the presidents in order. There was always a song. So it makes sense that that's now my favorite way to teach other people, because I sing songs to myself to remember things constantly.
I think Schoolhouse Rock is a little older generation than I am, like by not very much, but I feel like it's very Schoolhouse Rock. Like I could be like walking around, like listening to like a mushroom spore print song.
I should do a mushroom spore print song. That is an amazing idea. Nicole, I hope you don't mind if I borrow that idea from you.
Take it, run with it, go all the way down the field with it. I have to tell you one story about me almost poisoning myself with horse chestnuts.
No, Buckeyes. They're the symbol of our state and they are dangerous.
Well, I had some friends in a band come through town. And I say this to say that they were in town for one night and then they left. And one day they were in town, we went for a walk. And at the park, they were like, oh my God, we grew up as urban foragers. Look, it's chestnuts. And we got there's so many. And oh, look at, nobody cares about them. Can you believe it? And we took them home and I just had no knowledge. There was no Googling of this. There was no books. And I was like, you guys, I have a fireplace. What if we make chestnuts roasted over an open fire? And so I just threw them on a cookie sheet and just shoved them in the fireplace. And then my friends had to leave eventually because they were taking forever. And finally, I went to eat one. And nature's symbol, don't eat this, occurred, which was, this tastes like crap. This tastes like noxious, not for you. Stop it. So I tasted one and I was like, we didn't do a good job. They called me 2 hours later and were like, Nicole, those were horse chestnuts. Don't eat them. They're very dangerous. So I want to say, I appreciate your TikToks because I'm realizing how little process we went through to actually like finding something on the ground and putting it in our mouths. And then actually like there's certain things you have to soak for a long time, like acorns. Or grind, or you can only use a part of them. Like I can't just pick up everything I see as I go down the street and just take a bite out of it, which I also did with a rose hip once and found a worm inside. So
No.
I'm a little bit like if you like met a toddler who was like, can I try urban foraging? And I just started grabbing things and putting them in my mouth. That's who you're talking to right now. So I appreciate your educational elements. Thank you for sharing this information with us.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you are well. I'm glad that you are okay. I'm glad that your taste buds were like, actually, this was incorrect. And that's okay because life is about learning.
It is about learning. And I gained so much by being like, you know what, there's actually steps to this. There's actually knowledge behind this. It's not a real, just wing it. Like I'm not like, I can't just go act like a beaver and like grab a log and start like, necessarily. There are some plants you can do that with, but yeah, certainly not all of them. I do remember the Buckeyes from Ohio. Also, I saw a video that you did about hedge apples, which we had a lot of in Kansas.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, that's hedge apple country, bodark trees. So many of them in that area.
If people haven't seen them, it's green and it's bumpy. The whole thing is bumpy.
Yes.
Almost like a frog.
Yeah, like if you took an orange and you sent it to go on vacation on an alien planet, and then also spray painted it green and zapped it with a laser that made it like 2 times the size. That is an Osage orange. I'm just going to say the scientific name because people will get into like fist fights in my comments about what they are called. It is Maclura pomifera.
Who are these commenters? I love them.
I mean, I do too, except for when they start getting really mad at each other. And I'm like, hey, colloquialisms exist. We can all have regional names for things.
They're so heavy. I cannot tell.
Heavy.
They're like 4,000 pounds. They're like, it's like the heaviest apple you've ever picked up. Or it's like an apple with like a hard, heavy crust on it.
Yeah, I have to be careful when I'm gathering them from the tree a block away from me, because it's not fun having one of them fall on you.
I remember as a kid being like, "What? These are always in my way. You can't even eat them, and they're dangerous." And now I know I could have been roasting the seed.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, growing up, my elementary school had an Osage orange tree, and we also didn't know you could eat them. We would just like puncture them and use the latex sap to like glue things to our tree forts. So that was the use that I grew up with. And one of my friends who had a latex allergy would just have to stay far away from them at all times. And it wasn't until I was like, just because of the other plants that this plant is closely related to, like breadfruit, I feel like there has to be a use. So Oh God, I went down a rabbit hole this past fall. I read a lot of people's dissertations. I found new internet friends because there is a gentleman who's from Ohio and is now doing higher ed things in New York who makes wine out of Osage oranges
Ooh.
each year. And I was just like, pardon? Excuse me? Hello? I wish I had talked to him before the first time I tried to make jelly with them, uh, because I did not try to leach the latex out at all, and it was delicious. I only tried a little bit, but then it just like made my mouth feel like I ate a spicy pepper for about 20 minutes after.
Oh, wow. Do you have kind of,
Science.
do you have, I think that you may have a knowledge set that I don't, you have an understanding of like, okay, the food that I find is going to have to go through some processes for it to be edible. I feel like you have
Mhm.
a knowledge set that I kind of take for granted. That's like if the extra steps of like, this thing, I need to leach out the tannins. I need to leach out this. I need to get rid of this to make it usable. Do you have any kind of rules of thumbs for when you bring a new thing home of how you're going to process it before you attempt including it in your meal?
Well, for starters, I usually will do a lot of research about something new that I haven't tried before. Sometimes that is doing a deep dive on Instagram and seeing if any of the other members of the foraging community have used it before and the ways that they're using it. Sometimes it is diving deep into academia, as ethnobotany is becoming much more studied in higher education. It's starting to become easier to find some of those sources out and about, and a lot of them are very accessible online. Sometimes it's, thumbing through one of my hundreds of books and seeing if any of them, underneath the identification have any suggestions. But it also very much depends on what it is that I'm bringing home. Like for an edible mushroom, you should never eat raw wild mushrooms. So, if for anyone who didn't know, never eat a raw wild mushroom. So I know for any time I bring those home, baseline is they're getting heated in some sort of way before they are making their way to my mouth in any form. And maybe that's a dry fry. Maybe that is simmering in like jerky marinade at a rolling boil, for 10, 15 minutes. Just knowing, okay, I know I have to check this box first and then we carry on. When I'm bringing things like greens home, it's like, oh, well, because I don't want to eat a bug by accident, it's definitely getting like a dunk in warm, salty water first, and then a dunk in, regular fresh water to get the salt off of it before it makes its way into, say, the food processor for pesto or anything like that. And I mean, additionally, when trying new foods, you want to make sure you're not secretly allergic to it. So a lot of times I'll just do like a skin patch test, rub a little bit of it on the skin on the inside of your wrist, which is pretty delicate. If you have a reaction, don't eat it. Don't eat it. It happens to the best of us. I'm allergic to bananas. A lot of us have things we can't eat.
Does your mom eat a lot of foraged food, or does she like, whoa, you took this education I gave you and you ran with it?
The second thing you said.
She's like, wow, I didn't think you'd take it this seriously. I'm really
That is
impressed.
exactly what she says. And she's like, you are able to go to the grocery store. I just want to remind you that that's doable. And I'm like, yeah, but that's like so much less fun. And it's cost effective and it keeps me on my toes in the kitchen and it varies my diet throughout the year. Like it's so much more exciting this way.
Another reason I think you've brought a lot of joy this year is that exact thing. Like grocery shopping went from being a simple pleasure to like a harrowing experience, like a supermarket sweep gauntlet with like,
Yup.
and when I was in LA, it was just like influencers and people with children just doubling back, not following the rules, and me just being like 6 feet, like
Yeah.
just a wild woman. Yeah, just like wanting to take a measuring stick with me to the grocery store to be like, get away.
Yeah, I feel like,
Um,
all right.
or then like, and then getting out of the supermarket sweep and realizing that like some of the stuff I got was weird or like
Mhm.
secretly wasn't vegan. And then you're like, well, here we are. Here's what I have. So the idea of instead of like wearing a hazmat suit, running through the grocery store like a bullet, and instead getting to walk around my neighborhood in like some places not often tread, to like sniff around and really focus on the things around me, which I think is also interesting because, TikTok and that kind of thing, it's one of those things that I could just stay glued to and feel like I lost my whole life. However, you're encouraging people to go out and actually pay attention to the world around them, which I think is so valuable right now.
Oh, shucks. I mean, that's what kept me sane last year. And like you mentioned, like there was something very serene about, especially back in the spring when things first started getting very crazy and no one had their masks yet and nobody knew what the rules were. They just knew they were scared. There was something very like calming and relaxing about being like, well, I'm just gonna walk to the creek close to my house and I'm just gonna go get some salad greens and some berries and some spices from there, and no one else is here. It's just me, or maybe sometimes just me and my partner and our dog, and it made food having a much less stressful experience this past year than I know it would have been otherwise, which is wonderful.
I often, when I see your videos or when I hear about what percentage of your meals are from your foraged food, I feel like your partner really scored.
I am going to tell him you said that.
Would he be eating these like incredible, like weird jerkies and fun cookies and like, oh, here's this homemade wine and here's like my preserves and all this stuff. I mean, I feel like that person, he just won the lottery.
Oh, shucks. Well, we have a running joke, except it's not a joke because it's real, and it's called the Jeff list, and it's all the things that my partner is willing to eat a second time.
I guess I didn't even think about that. Yeah, what's on the Jeff list? Is there anything that's just like, no, not for me, please, more for you?
So there's some things that are like on the Alexis list that I'm definitely doing again that are not on the Jeff list. Jeff is in the camp of people who are like a little weirded out by mushrooms. So like mushroom jerky is not on the Jeff list, but mushroom jerky is 100% on the Alexis list. And after some drop-offs on porches, also very much on Jeff's parents' list as well, which is fun and good. I'm trying to think of
what are his parents like?
Oh my gosh. So his parents have been big fans of the mushroom jerky and all of its various iterations, both the hen of the woods jerky and the oyster mushroom jerky, which makes my heart happy. Anything that's involved, like any of the wild alliums, always goes over well, both of Jeff and his parents. I don't know, with both of our sets of parents, I haven't exposed them to any of the like super crazy 90 to 100% of this dish is forage stuff yet, because I am afraid that they'll never want to eat anything foraged again. Like for my family, we went down to Cincinnati to do this big like social distance outdoor celebration for my sister graduating from college, and I made everybody Juneberry hand pies, and I'm like, no one can hate a Juneberry hand pie. It's literally impossible. Like, Juneberries taste like what if blueberries tasted the way you wanted them to every time you decide you have a hankering for blueberries. No hate, no shade blueberries, but they could taste better. And it's a hand pie. Who doesn't love like a flaky pastry with jam in the center? It's, impossible. And so I bring family members things like that.
Is there anything that you've made that you were like, it's really fun that I got to make this and I'm probably never going to be picking this up again?
Oh gosh, I say that about acorn flour, and then acorn season rolls around again, and then suddenly I'm like, where did these 15 pounds of acorns come from? Who did this? And does that mean that I now have to crack all of them open?
I feel like you need a squirrel in your employ.
Honestly, I'm literally, I'm going to reach behind me. You can't see this, folks at home, because this is a podcast, but this sound is a bowl of acorns that I still haven't processed yet. We're still working on it. I feel like maybe by spring, I will be finished processing all of the acorns that I have brought into this house over the last 4 months.
Well, I feel like if you and Jeff ever just need me to like read a book on Zoom or on tape while you guys just sit on the couch and crack acorns, I'm willing to do that. Be like,
I
here's an
would
article.
actually love that.
Here's an article I found on Twitter. I don't have time to read it. Could you just kind of give me the highlights? Whatever.
Exactly. If you could just read me all of the headlines from the front page of the New York Times today while I just get this done.
And then he'll be like, who is this person you have on Zoom? That's just.
And I'll be like, don't question it. She's making our lives easier. Come on.
She just wants to see us get through these acorns. It's very satisfying for her. Well, so we talked about you going down to the creek and this is the stretch of a segue, but I know you've talked before about researching where you can walk around and harvest things and forage things. And this tied into a conversation about trespassing laws and anti-foraging laws. And it turns out, I was reading an article or like an old scholarly paper about this after I saw you mention it a couple of places. And I was like, oh, is every trespassing law just rooted in racism? Is that why they all even started in the first place?
Yes. The answer is yes.
It seems like the answer is yes.
Yeah, and people do not like hearing that, but by and large, in the United States, trespassing was not like an arrestable offense until immediately after the Civil War, when slaves were freed, and suddenly a bunch of very wealthy folks in the South were like, but what if I don't want these folks who I now want to come back to me as sharecroppers so I can continue having cheap labor? What if I don't want them to be able to provide for themselves and their families, both in terms of gathering food and in terms of gathering things to sell to other people? Like, it was very much a deliberate action to try to cut Black and Indigenous folks off at the ankles to be able to sustain themselves and become like wealthy members of society and to start building wealth. And if you look back, it's really interesting talking to some folks in the UK, especially because their foraging laws, especially on public property, are not very stringent to non-existent. And we had originally inherited that kind of spirit from them when colonists came to the United States. And everyone just kind of thinks that, it's always been trespassing and it's always been bad and it's always been worth, reaching out to law enforcement if you're on land that doesn't belong to you. But that was not a part of the United States history for like the first 260 years of Europeans being here. And then, of course, if we go back even further than that, I mean...
Well, because Indigenous people were foraging, and then they were helping colonize, or colonizers were like, oh, we'll forage too. And then at some point, what happened?
Well, at some point, first, colonizers wanted space. And a lot of times when an oppressive group wants space, the thing that they don't want in their space is the group they're oppressing. So it makes sense to push them out either with force or with legal action. But the thing that's really unfortunate is, while of course, Native Americans suffered like so much in terms of being displaced and in terms of disease and in terms of getting just the short end of the stick in so many treaties, it wasn't actually illegal for a lot of Indigenous folks to be foraging on public land until those laws started coming into place in the 1800s. So it was like two groups getting shafted at the same time. And it just makes me so upset because so many of those laws persist into the modern day. And a lot of very well-intentioned folks are just like, oh, well, we have those laws to like, keep the plants safe and, to keep the populations of those plants safe. And I'm just like, well, usually taking away the group of people who were stewarding those outdoor spaces to begin with is not what I would consider protecting those outdoor spaces. In fact, we lost a lot of native plants because a lot of the very deliberate fire setting or a lot of the very deliberate gathering methods that Indigenous folks had practiced for centuries, that many of them had passed on to enslaved Black folks in the South, suddenly weren't being done anymore. And it kind of really changed the makeup of a lot of the remaining wild spaces. Yeah, so much like many things, racism is at the heart of it.
Racism in America. Interesting. I feel like,
surprise.
I feel like it's one of those things where I had never thought about, when did trespassing laws come to pass? And then I was like, oh, of course. Of fucking course. Oh, and it's an antiquated law that was set up just to oppress people and financially like kneecap them. And now it persists to this day. Okay. Like it just makes sense. I was looking at a video the other day that was about redlining and about how neighborhoods, I mean, especially in Portland, but neighborhoods that were redlined where Black people were the only people, were the only places they were allowed to buy property, then also didn't get the investment from the city to plant giant trees that would then keep those neighborhoods cooler. So those neighborhoods are actually 10 degrees, up to 10 degrees hotter right now during different seasons and are more affected by climate change because they don't have trees to absorb and protect them.
Which is just, yeah, it all roots back to environmental issues also being race issues. I mean, you can go back and trace through history and see that Black and poor neighborhoods are the ones that are most likely to be near like places where trash is being dumped and are most likely to be near places where heavy industry is planning to be. And everyone always gets really surprised. And I'm just like, no, like environmentalism, in my opinion, I'm glad that it's starting to do more for people of color, and I'm glad that people of color are starting to have more seats at the table talking about it, because it really does affect our communities in some very like sinister, sneaky kind of ways.
Yeah. I do want to piggyback off something else you said too, which is the forest management was a big issue here in Oregon in the fall when all of Oregon was on fire.
Yeah.
And there was a push, and I don't actually know where it's at, but there was a push to kind of re-involve tribes, Indigenous tribes in Oregon into forest management, like controlled burns and people that were the original stewards of the forests here. I mean, the Pacific Northwest was just nothing if not tons of tribes of Indigenous folks who have just been pushed out. And I mean, Portland itself has a nickname, Stumptown, because it's a clear cut. It's like inside a clear cut where it used to be a forest.
And it makes me so sad that a great deal of devastation, a great deal of loss of certain plant species and animal species is what it has taken for some people to wake up and be like, oh, you mean the people who had been taking care of this land for millennia did know what they were doing? What a crazy random happenstance. Who would have guessed? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. And I will say, in the realm of laws pertaining to foraging, slowly but surely you were starting to see, especially national parks, be like, oh, well, actually, it's okay. Like maybe some Indigenous folks can gather some of these plants that are important to like cultural touchstones and rights. But even with some of those laws, there's still like so many restrictions around like what can be gathered and how much can be gathered. I know in terms of, I think it was the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was working with the Eastern Band of the Cherokee about gathering, what's the name of the plant? Sochan? I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly. But to even get to the point where that was being allowed, the tribe had to like front thousands of dollars in order to have like a review done with scientists to prove that they were allowed to do this essentially without like causing a huge hit to the ecosystem. Of course, the findings then later found out that the method of gathering was actually better for seed dispersal of Sochan. And I'm just like, just get rid of all of the laws. Put restrictions in place for things that are on at-risk lists, but just get rid of the laws. Let's just start over.
I think we're primed to start over. I'm
Yeah,
behind this.
in a number of ways for a million different reasons.
And listeners, this is going to be vague, but we've got plenty of time at home. Nothing's really opening up for a while. Take it upon yourself to research the laws in your state and your area and see if there's something you can do to change them. You can do the boring work of calling your legislators, like get it, looking at local politics, local council meetings, whatever thing to actually get involved and change some of these old, baked into the crust of your town racist rules.
Exactly. Please do be the thorn in your council people's side, like I am about our parks getting sprayed. There's simply no reason.
This is a question I have for you, which is, and I think the answer is just go to a less traveled place. But as somebody with a tall dog, how do you protect yourself against things that are just soaked in dog pee?
So the rule that I go into foraging with is if this is a place a dog could pee, a dog has peed here.
Okay.
That's just a really good rule of thumb to use. It means that a lot of the foraging that I do is usually like not directly, say, on the path, like maybe it's a pace off of it. Foraging immediately after like heavy rainfall also sometimes makes me feel a bit better about that. And I mean, I'm washing everything when I get home, and sometimes like that's not a good enough answer for people. And then I just have to pull the like, what fertilizer do you think the farms that you are buying your food from are using? Because if there's not real urea in them, there's synthesized urea in them. And if those plants are cleanable, why aren't mine?
I think that is true. And you know, there's so much in everything we eat. There's so many like tiny bugs that have crawled inside something and died. Everything, especially organic vegetables, have been grown in. Like
we've all seen that terrifying video of the organic strawberries, being put into the salty water and it just being like, a small horde of insects.
I mean, during Oregon strawberry season, Oregon has these delicious wild strawberries that are small and they're the best strawberries on earth. And they make strawberries that you bite into and they're white. It's just like it's a joke. It's like a joke non-food compared to these little strawberries. And I mean, I won't even wash them. I'll just eat them on my way home from the store. And who knows? Maybe I'm not vegan anymore. That's fine.
I do think about that sometimes because during Juneberry season here in Columbus, I'm just like, I'm sorry. 1/10 of everything that I'm gathered is going into my mouth as I'm gathering, and I am just accepting the risk.
I am the little kid from the book Blueberries for Sal, which I read as a kid. Did you ever read that?
Yeah.
Where Sal is just like sitting and just eating all the blueberries, and then maybe she's joined by a bear or a baby bear.
Yes. Oh man, Blueberries for Sal. I haven't even thought of that book in eons.
That's me right now. I realize I must pivot to some listener questions.
Yes. Oh, fun fact, Blueberries for Sal was written by Robert McCloskey, who was like an integral historical figure at like the summer camp that I grew up going to.
What do you mean?
He worked there back like almost 100 years ago now, when he was like a 20-something.
What if I found out right now that you were timeless, that you were like actually a time traveler? Like, oh, yeah, I saw him when I was a kid. He worked there 100 years ago.
And this is how I'm telling the world. Yep, that's me, time traveling Black Forager. I keep just going to the future because the past is so much worse for me.
Oh, God. It's like an Octavia Butler novel.
Exactly. Right down to the acorn flower.
This actually segues to a question from friend to the show, Morgan. Who are your favorite teachers? Any subject?
Whoa.
I've never gotten a question like this before.
Whoa, I love this question. Okay, so my art teacher at my elementary school, Robin Hartman, who I'm now going to have to tell to listen to this episode because I love her dearly. Definitely one of my favorite teachers. Just the encouragement to think outside of the box and all of the projects that we would ever be working on, and how accepting she was of like any failures that we did, but like not calling them failures, just like spinning them and being like, okay, well, what can you do with this, shoebox haunted house that you're making now that you accidentally got hot glue on it? Maybe you turn that hot glue into spider webs, going across the front of the house. And I mean, it was art class, but those are things that you can apply anywhere and everywhere. So definitely Robin Hartman. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Ooh.
Shout out to Bill Nye. We love when education is purposefully engaging. I remember watching his videos, and I loved my elementary school. Like, our classes were really engaging, so his show didn't feel too different from what we were doing in our classes. But then I remember going to public school for junior high and being like, this is not the same.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bill Nye is just so good at breaking things down into edible little bite-sized pieces that a kid can understand, but an adult can still enjoy. And I think that that is kind of what I try to do with my content too.
I think that you're winning at that.
Oh.
Just so you know, I feel like you are the next Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Oh, shucks. I'm not worthy. I'm simply not worthy of the title. I hope someday to be. And I hope to meet Bill Nye someday. That's my frickin' dream.
I feel like that's so doable. This is doable.
New TikTok campaign. Everybody tag Bill Nye in my videos.
Tag Bill Nye.
Oh my God. I
just tagged somebody. Yeah.
He's such a sweet old man. Don't bother him.
I feel like anything's possible. Today, I tagged somebody from the show Chopped in a comic I did about food, and he wrote back. He was like, wonderful illustrations, inspired. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Ted Allen. It was Ted.
Yes. Oh my God, I love Ted Allen.
And I think I didn't even realize he was gay. My partner and I forgot that he was on Queer Eye, and I was like, he's gay. And she was like, no, he's not. And I was like, what kind of woman do you think he dates? And then we just went around her, and then finally we found a picture of him with his husband.
Oh.
Do you watch Chopped?
I love Chopped. Chopped is the TV show that I turn to when I'm feeling uninspired with all of the forageables that I bring home, because like 3 episodes in and you're suddenly just like, well, actually, I'm going to put this chickweed and this acorn oil together with a little bit of milkweed vinegar to make a very fancy vinaigrette. And it's just like, it just reminds you that a lot of different kinds of food exist and that there are a lot of different ways to interpret them. I freaking love Chopped.
Oh my God. Chef Alexis, I appreciated what you did with the oyster mushroom bacon, but I felt like the pine needle cookie didn't completely mesh with this dish, and the flavors kind of got lost for me.
Yeah, it feels like you were trying to tell 2 different stories with the dish that you put in front of us today.
The plating was beautiful. A baby squirrel did crawl out of the pine cone that you set on my plate, but it added a fun ambiance.
If this happened in a restaurant, I'd be elated. It adds to the experience.
Oh my God. I also love a fellow vegan watching Chopped. There's certain episodes, like they did one with baby goats the other day where I had to look like fetal goats, full body, that I had to just cover. I had to just look away until whatever was done was done.
Until it was over. Yeah. And I mean, most of us didn't grow up vegan. But I was vegetarian for most of my childhood. But even so, this is so funny looking back on. No one give my parents hate for this. But I went to culinary camp as an 8-year-old. And so once a week, maybe, I would be responsible for either a side dish or a main dish of dinner for my whole family. Because they were just like, oh, you're good at doing this, cool. You're in the rotation now, have fun. We have jobs, you don't. And as a high schooler who was no longer eating meat, having my mom being like, can you just do those salmon fillets the way that you do them for the three of us? And being like, I'm not going to taste it to make sure that I did a good job, but I will do it the same way that I've been doing it for years. And I hope it turns out the way you want it to. You already bought them. So yes, I guess I will wrap them in tin foil and put the right oils and spices in there. And I just remember thinking like, oh, this is weird, but you know.
I've thought about that watching Chopped, once watching a vegetarian chef make something and be like, I once I got a job at a coffee shop and the owner yelled at me. She was like, how can you cook if you cannot taste? Because she wanted me to make this stew that just, she was married to the idea of chicken stock. And I was like, I'm a teenage vegan. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to try it. And yeah, and then she was like, she yelled at me. So I commend your ability to actually make something edible that you couldn't taste for other people.
And it's only because I had tasted it previously and was like, I'm generally aware of the way that this should look and smell to be the way that it was before.
Can I ask you, do you have go-to ingredients or go-to flavor profiles that you put in, or sauces that you put in jerky and or bacon when you turn your different mushrooms and things, or carrots?
100%. So for me, the three things that are going in, regardless of anything else in the flavor profile: olive oil or any other kind of neutral oil, just to keep the mushrooms still a little bendy once they have gone into the dehydrator, to kind of desiccate the rest of that liquid out. So that's step one, and a thing that I feel like people forget pretty often. Number two is soy sauce. I'm willing to budge on that for any other kind of like fermenty, koji, exposed kind of umami source. Like I could also see just like adding a miso paste in as well if you're not necessarily kicking it with soy sauce for whatever reason. And then my personal favorite, I put it in too many things, is my smoked hickory bark syrup. Because it checks the box of both the liquid smoke and the maple syrup that I would encourage people to add otherwise, and that's what I encourage people to add to take its place in the recipe. But those three things are the foundation that I build everything else on top of. And then on top of that, maybe it'll be a, cracked black pepper. So a ton of black pepper will go in, or, maybe it'll be focusing more teriyaki. So then the soy sauce gets upped, and then, the smoked hickory syrup goes in, but a little bit of pineapple juice goes in too. Like, it varies. But yeah, those are my three suggestions.
I am really jealous of this syrup. It sounds delightful.
I can send you some. Do you want me to send you some?
Yes, please. I'm happy to do any kind of art, book, drawing, swap of anything with you. I love edible things. I love tasting things on the podcast. I love just eating things in my life. I would be thrilled.
Yay. Okay. I will get your address and I will mail you a jar. And if you want to make it yourself, I can also mail you some hickory bark so you get the whole experience.
Oh my God. Yes, and yes, and both and what? Yes, anything. Here's a question from friend to the show, Beth Ditto, who introduced us. I'm very thankful for. I wrote to her and I was like, will you please introduce me to Alexis, because I am dying to talk to her. She says, when does Alexis sleep? Because her content is put together and consistent. They're not just posts. They're like mini episodes complete with solid jams, lyrics by her, music played by her and performed. If I tried to make content like that, I would have to spend 6 hours just trying to figure out how to post it. Such good taste. How long does that take her?
That is
Beth.
What a literal earth angel. How dare Beth be caring about me so deeply? Beth, you're too nice. Cut that out. Don't cut it out. It's fantastic, and thank you. Vulnerability moment. I'm probably not sleeping right now as much as I should be, just because I do have a full-time job that does require 40 and sometimes more hours of my time each week. But I am also still like very dedicated to putting out at least 2 videos a week, which then, requires the shooting and the editing and the captioning And then, you know, I have an edit for TikTok and an edit for IGTV and an edit for Twitter. And on IGTV, I'm just very married to the idea of just like establishing where I am, like headspace wise. So then I always have my little like baby essays that I write to accompany everything that I post. But yeah, to answer the question very simply, I am sleeping. I could be sleeping more. If you see me answering things on Instagram at like midnight, like don't be afraid to be a deer and tell me to go to sleep, because I should go to sleep. I love what I do, and I also love the people that it's given me the opportunity to talk to. And sometimes I just get like so focused on providing something that I think is valuable. And then if you see me disappear for a week, it's because I burned myself out and I'm resting and I'm hiding from everyone and everything.
How you told me that you just tried to edit down that kind of giant thought and knowledge base around racist trespassing laws into a 60-second video. I think that you're such a good editor too.
Thank you. Oh my
You're welcome.
gosh.
Well, these things that you're tackling things that are pretty big, like pretty big knowledge bases that you probably did a fair amount of reading and then lived experience, foraging around and tasting and knowing and just living in. And then you're distilling things down really, really well. And I don't
Thank
know
you
if that's
so much. I mean,
more of a comment than a question.
It's just from practicing. I mean, I also studied theater in college, so I knew how to set things up from like a playwriting standpoint. I know how to like identify beats when you're trying to tell a particular story. And in a way, you know, all of my videos are like doing the exact same thing that I was doing when I was like writing plays. It's just very tiny, very condensed. You know the points you need to hit, you know what the beginning looks like, you know what the end looks like, and then it's just making everything in the middle make sense. But in terms of like the video editing, so much of that has been trial and error, seeing what does resonate with people, seeing what does not resonate with people, and just learning from other content creators. Sometimes I'll see an edit and I'll be like, oh, I like that, and I want to edit something like that too, which is weird because I never really stopped to think about that. And now I'll just be like watching food television and be like, oh, I really like the way that they cut from this moment to that moment. I'm writing that down so I can think about that the next time I'm editing.
That's so cool. At some point I started taking on the term lifelong learner, which somebody said this a long time ago. I would teach zines and comics in the schools to kids. And at a professional development, they were like, we're lifelong learners. And at the time I was like a punk 21-year-old. I was like, give me a break. I know everything I need to know about zines. And I've really, as I encroach upon middle age, I'm really like into that. I'm like, I heard Eileen Miles, the poet, say before, a poem can always be leaner and meaner. And I feel like the same, like with comics or with writing or with anything, like if it's worth saying, you can say it in less words. And if you're good enough at writing and at the thing you're doing, you can pack a lot of meaning into that small amount of space.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, I don't know if I ever even gave my third favorite teacher, but I had like an English teacher, my AP English teacher, my senior year, Dr. Bard, who was really good at challenging me to do that. And I feel like I still hear her voice in my head sometimes when I'm like plotting out the things that I want to say. And I'm just like, actually, I was really married to saying this, but that's not adding anything to the narrative. And just condensing is a real art form. And I'm not amazing at it. I have to do it for the format that I present a lot of my content in. But continuing to like learn forever. Yeah, I feel you. When I first got out of college, I was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I took all my classes. I'm never going to use physics or differential equations, and I'm probably never going to use my screenwriting classes either. And I didn't want to go back to school. I wanted to get as far away from academia as possible. And now, as I'm approaching 30, I'm just like, oh, I really miss learning on a regular basis. And I miss kind of learning in a structured setting. And I miss learning alongside other people the most. Learning is so cool. There's always more information out there, which is simultaneously really overwhelming, but really exciting and invigorating to me. And with plants, like I'm never going to know every plant. And I know that, and I have to remind myself of that sometimes. But what's the harm in trying, you know?
I love the idea of you trying to learn as many plants as you can within your lifetime. This is an off the wall question that somebody asked. Can you name your top 3 favorite Rue girls? Do you watch RuPaul's Drag Race? This is from someone named Donna Van Jesse.
Oh my gosh, top 3. Okay. I'm sitting here next to my auto harp. So for my auto harp alone, the first person who I have to say is Trixie Mattel.
And your outfit.
I'm also I'm in pink fringe right now. I'm like in a Patsy Cline jacket. I have to say Trixie Mattel as my number 1. First and foremost, I am in love with everything that Shea Coulee does. Just absolutely everything. One of the queens who I follow both from my personal Instagram and from my foraging Instagram, because I just don't want to miss anything. And because it's like pertinent right now, I don't know, by the time this episode comes out, she might not still be in the running, but I am obsessed with Olivia Lux this season.
I think she's going to go far.
She's a dark horse. I think she's a dark horse and I love her. I think she's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And I love her eye for fashion. So there are 3. They're not my only 3. But
this question's hard.
It is hard.
I was trying to think. I was like, who is? I really love Tamisha Iman.
Yes.
The last episode. I don't know when this will come out in relation to Untucked and Drag Race, but her just being like, I am a grown ass woman.
Yes.
Just yelling during Untucked. I don't know if she's long for this world. I don't think she's going to win, but I'm very happy to see her on the show.
Same.
Simone, I think, is going to go all the way to the top.
Yeah. Simone is the one who I love Olivia Lux, but if I had to place a monetary bet for whatever reason, Simone is absolutely who I would be betting on.
And whenever I go and I'm trying to show, if I'm ever like, ooh, I want to feel invigorated by a lip sync, I like watching Alyssa Edwards lip syncs.
Yeah. Yes. Talk about just a lively performer. Though I will say Denali this season has really been bringing it with the very engaging performances. Oh my gosh. And she just posted an ice skating video to When I Grow Up. And I just watch it when I'm having a bad day.
Can you believe that she danced in ice skates on that slippery stage?
I cannot. So Jeff is usually in the room while I'm watching Drag Race, but typically doing other things. And so he'll kind of tune in and out as, things get interesting and in his opinion, less interesting. And he could not look away. He's like, oh no, I absolutely need to see the way that this is going to play out. I was like, yeah, you and me both. Is an ankle gonna get broken today? What's gonna happen?
Well, I was imagining her just busting up that stage. I'm surprised she didn't even have the little plastic things on that you see nope. Nancy Kerrigan put on at the end of the Olympics performance.
I'm so impressed with Denali as well. Just what a kick butt performer.
She is a kick butt performer. Okay, we have a few more questions.
Yeah.
Brianne Jeanette wants to know, what is a wild ingredient you are dying to try? A bucket list item.
Ooh, bucket list item. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of things that are either further south or in out west that I don't get to use very often. Let me think. Oh, okay. So when we say mugwort, there are 2 different artemisias that people are typically talking about in the United States, depending on where you are. So over here, I'm usually talking about Artemisia vulgaris, sweet baby common mugwort. But there's a California mugwort, and I see Pascal Baudard using it all the time in his foraged foods, and I want to try it. I want to try it. It's probably not crazy different. They're both Artemisias, but I want to try it, and I want to be able to go and forage it. So maybe the next time I am out west.
Oh my God. I mean, when the world opens up, however it does, please, wherever I am, California or Oregon, I'm so happy to pick you up at the airport, preferably Burbank Airport. Everyone on the show knows I hate
Noted.
LAX. But I understand people do what they have to do. They have to go to LAX. Sometimes they have to experience it for themselves. But I'm happy to drive you to any weird, far-flung place and
You
just
sweet angel.
forge. And then I could sketch the plants or draw the plants while you do your sniff tests or patch tests or tree climbing.
I'm so down for this. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's happening.
This
We're
is a
saying
real.
it now.
This is a real offer.
Agreement.
Verbal agreement.
And I will not fly into LAX because if I never fly into LAX again, I will still have been in that building for too much of my life.
Oh, so you already know this specific hell that is LAX.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
My own sister, my own flesh and blood sister, who I see maybe twice a decade, came to visit LA, and I begged her not to go into LAX, and she did. And then she got her return flight home at 6 a.m. from LAX, and I was like, I will buy you an Uber. That is what I'm willing to do. I can't describe it to people who don't live in LA, but if you ever go to LA, let's say planes exist again, go into Burbank, do yourself a favor, worth the money.
It is. Do it. Because getting anywhere from LAX or getting to LAX and then just existing in LAX, like 2 out of 10, and I'm only giving it a 2 because I met Felicia Day once while I was waiting for a flight home from a work thing at LAX, and she complimented my banana shirt. That's the only reason LAX gets a 2.
I mean, I don't know how this compares, but I did meet Emo Phillips, this comedian from the 80s at Burbank Airport. I was gonna say Tiny Tim. No, not Tiny. Emo Phillips I met at Burbank. I'm just like, Burbank might have some like lower tier celebrities if you're looking for that kind of experience.
I'm here for that.
Emo Phillips. Okay. I forgot to ask you a really important thing, which is about ethical consumption, which you talk about a lot, like knowing how many to take from what, and then not stealing from bees.
Yep. So with ethical consumption, you have to do your research before you set out to gather anything, honestly. Like you should always be doing your research regardless, but there are definitely some species. If you're in my neck of the woods, like do your research about common milkweed before you go out and gather. If you're going out and gathering, it better be from a huge stand of milkweed so you know that you taking a couple umbels of flowers is not going to be causing any kind of duress to the monarch population, which is under duress enough already as is. And like that is what their caterpillars eat, is milkweed. So you don't want to be taking it away from them, which is why, while I love milkweed shoots as a veggie, I get my fix from like milkweed flowers, or milkweed flower buds, or even sometimes some of the seed pods before the silks set, so long as the plant has more than one set of seed pods that it's setting at any given time. Because when you cut off a shoot first thing in the spring, well, that's the whole plant. That's the potential that entire plant was going to be putting up that whole spring, summer, into the fall. And to me, that's just not worth it. But if you have like a field in your backyard that's all milkweed, I mean, by all means, because they're slowly going to approach your house otherwise if you are not gathering up some of those shoots every year. Another one is ramps. And I am very passionate about Allium trichocum. That there are 2 different variations. One of the variations is already on a lot of different watch lists going down the eastern seaboard, moving into the Appalachian Mountains. And they are very trendy in the food scene, especially in New York City and in Chicago right now. And are they good? Yes, but they're just an allium, like an onion or a leek or a shallot. Like they're definitely not worth decimating a population over. And they have a very long life cycle. It can take, usually around 5 years, but as long as 7 years for them to reach sexual maturity before they're able to like make flower and make their own seeds and, have a shot at creating new offspring. And if you're pulling up a bulb, even if it's already 2 years old, well, that potential's gone. That bulb that could have put 8 or 9 seeds back into the earth a couple of years down the line is now never going to get the chance. And when you're only taking a couple of them that one time a year, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up over time. And you have to take into consideration the other people who will come out and forage behind you. So I would definitely advise, if folks are wanting to get into foraging, doing a little bit of research into what's plentiful in your area, because those are the things that maybe you can be a little bit more greedy, a little grabby with. Like if you have garlic mustard in your area, just pick all of it. No one's going to be mad at you for getting rid of garlic mustard because it's horrible and it's everywhere and it spreads super easily. But if you're in an area like me with a population of ramps, thankfully in Ohio, while our numbers are decreasing, they're not decreasing at a rate that's like scaring anybody yet, but they could. And a lot of new people started foraging in the last year because there's nothing else to do. And for those ones, it's like, hey, don't dig up the bulbs. If you absolutely need to use it, like only collect a leaf, and only collect a leaf from a plant that has 2 or more leaves, and only if it's in a large patch. Like give that plant a fighting chance at continuing to photosynthesize through the rest of its season so it can store that energy away for next year. There's a lot to take into consideration. There isn't really one set rule across the board for everything, except do your research.
Do your research, everybody. I appreciate how much you care about the plants' life cycles and the animals that are attracted to the plants.
Yeah.
And people
because we're all intrinsically connected. Someone getting the rug pulled out from all of them eventually affects all of us. So yeah, be nice to your local creatures and critters. They are helping you in ways that you don't even know. Possums eat ticks. I don't like ticks. Lyme disease is awful. Jeff got it last year while we were foraging. No. Everyone's just a big part of the circle. We're all connected.
What if you had like a team that went with you foraging and it included like a squirrel for acorn gathering? It had a possum for tick maintenance. You had your dog who you've trained to sniff something, may or may not be truffles. I don't know who else you have along with you, but you just have this little kind of foresty, your little Snow White sort of, you have somebody perch your finger there so you can all go forage together. I should tell people that you are wearing these beautiful outfits while you're foraging all the time. And something I really appreciate is all the clothes that you wear in your TikTok videos. And I noticed that we both are ardent fans of this weirdo LA fashion company called Fashion Brand Company. Her clothes make me laugh so much.
Same here. They make me laugh and then immediately make me want to put the clothes onto my body. And anyone who can do that is an artist that I want to support forever and ever and ever. The end.
She's
and I
such a true weirdo.
Such a true weirdo. And I love that we're both rocking our Fashion Brand Company, our FBC right now. I'm sad that people can't see it because we are truly fabulous right now. I'm loving it.
I will take a screen grab of this. Hold on. Ready? I'm going to put my foot up. So
put a leggy up. Yeah.
Okay. I took a picture. It's recording the video, which we could do something with if we wanted to, but I just have the picture here for this. I brought Alexis just like a bunch of different outfits that I haven't been able to wear anywhere, but that I have hoarded over the quarantine.
Oh, the brick house dress.
The cheerleader dress, the brick house dress. I'm wearing some leggings that have a built-in, so it looks like I'm wearing a thong over leggings. I want you to know, if you ever come to LA, that's where she is. And I did once go to a sample sale there where there was even weirder stuff. Like I don't know, maybe I can show you like a weird coat that made me feel like Beavis when he's Cornholio. Like it just had like the tiniest little window for your face. And I feel like, I don't even know how to describe it, like a sweatshirt that went to somebody's ankles.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. I know a little bit before I fell head over heels in love with her brand. She had like a red dress with hands on it, but then hands were a halter neck. So it looks like the dress is strangling you. And I'm just like, she's a genius. Yeah, next time I'm in LA, maybe I'll just be like, hey, Penelope, can we hang out? Can we be friends?
Oh, yeah. And then you could go see the even weirder stuff that she never even went forward with.
That's the dream.
Oh my God. Last question. Are there any questions that you wish people would ask you that they don't? Or is there
Oh
anything else you want
man.
people to know about you?
I feel like a question that no, I guess I get that pretty frequently. I was going to be like, oh, people don't always ask me what like their first forageable should be. And you know
People
what?
did
I will
ask
answer
that.
it.
Yes.
So onion grass, aka field garlic, I'm like not one. Now it's like one of the few living things that's up if you are experiencing true winter like we are in the Midwest. I went for a walk today and it is poking up even through our couple inches of snow. So it is definitely out there. But my favorite one to suggest to people is wood sorrel. A lot of people conflate them with clovers. They have the cute little heart-shaped leaves and the tiny yellow flowers. They taste like lemon heads. Like we used to call them nature's lemon heads at camp growing up, and we would just eat them just right off of the side of the trails as we were going to and from like the river to go canoeing and like heading back to our cabin. And that one's really fun. And it's also really easy to teach kids. That was one of the earlier ones that I learned too. And I think fostering that kind of cautious curiosity and then maintaining it into your adulthood is very important. And it makes the world continue to feel full of wonder into your older years. I say as I'm like all of 28 years old.
I have a cautious curiosity. I'm a lifelong learner with a cautious curiosity.
Ooh.
Is that different than lemon balm?
Yes, it is. Lemon balm is a different plant.
Okay, wonderful. Because that's
Great
something that
question.
grows in abundance in Portland yards is lemon balm.
So good too. Teas made out of it. Mwah, chef's kiss.
Oh my gosh. Alexis, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole. This was so much fun.
I'm really so excited to be in your universe, to have you in my universe, to know that you're in the universe. And I know listeners, a lot of different listeners were like, oh, I'm so excited. I love her. I love her stuff. And that made me very, very happy to talk to you.
Shucks.
We eat weird vegan stuff all the time. And it's not even the stuff that you're trying is wholesome. And it's only weird because people have been disconnected from the world around them.
Exactly. It's weird, but it's the free kind of weird, which a lot of times the fun, weird vegan stuff is actually very expensive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. It's such a delight talking to you. Hold on. I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm supposed to ask you for listeners. Do you have a book or somewhere where people can find your recipes, or do you have anything like that on the horizon?
I am working on compiling my recipes. As of right now, I have been posting a lot of them onto my Patreon as I like work on them, or if it's a recipe in which the results are really delicious, but the results look really ugly, like my gnocchi and grits recipe, that also lives on my Patreon because I'm like, I can't show this to people on Instagram.
It isn't quite grammable, but you already paid to get in, so I'm just going to show it to you.
Exactly. Like, it's delicious, but it is ugly. And you gave me $1 for it. So I do have some of my recipes there, but I am working on compiling them because even if it's just as like a zine or something, I would love to kind of release, a year's worth of seasonal recipes. Maybe at the end of the year. Keep me on it, you guys. Keep me honest about that because I do really want to do it. And I've been pretty good about writing the recipes I've come up with over the last couple weeks down.
Okay, glorious. All right, now I'm going to stop recording.